Hey, welcome, hello, thank you for clicking. My name's Kevin. It's been years since I last did a video on this channel. Probably about 6 months, at least 6 months, probably more ago now, I did a video with Aaron Kimbley and Megan Jen from Gays Against Groomers. Meg and Jen were formerly in California, but they've moved state, but they are still deeply involved, but they're just in a different state. We got together to do a video that was titled Trans Men Lesbians, which is a really cool chat. I'll link it in the description so you can have a look for yourself. It's worth checking Aaron's Substack out as well. In the conversation, we kind of all agreed that yes, trans men are part of the lesbian category overall and theoretically. I think we all kind of agreed that there's kind of an asterisk next to that, in that doesn't always pan out in real life. And since we had that chat, I've kind of been going back and forth in my mind about the asterisks, like which parts work and which parts don't. And I've just been sitting with it for a couple of months. There have been a few things that have kind of that I had to figure out. Yeah, anyway, so it's kind of been playing on my mind a lot. And I've noticed that kind of in the gender critical space, there because people are arguing from point to point, sometimes the principles that should be at the base of those arguments don't always add up. Like, you'll see people arguing against anyone taking hormones because they're dangerous and powerful and damaging, and the chance of regret is high, etc., etc. And then at the same breath, they kind of downplay what it looks like on the other side of transition, like that it's not quite so complicated. It's just, like a masculinized lesbian, or a woman LARPing as a man, or a man pretending to be a woman, or a woman who thinks that she is a man. Like, things have been condensed down into kind of sound bites in ways that can be a little bit problematic, in that they don't always line up at the principle level in the way that people kind of think. Like, I've kind of noticed that recently. Like, there's this whole postmodernist kind of, language creates reality type, thing that's very influential in queer theory. But I've noticed over time that it started to kind of seep into the gender critical pushback. Like, there are even like fully transitioned, like, transsexuals that are starting to try to jettison the word trans now, because it's quite an uncomfortable space, understandably, it's a very uncomfortable title to have. So, like, there are people that are saying, that they're just lesbians, or they're just gay boys kind of thing, even though they're fully transitioned, and they happen to be gay boys that fully pass as women and are completely medicalized, or like lesbians that are completely masculine. I think that and like completely masculine and as pass as men, I kind of like if they want to do that, that's fine, but I think that the principles don't always line up, and I don't know that people are necessarily thinking about that quite so much. It's a very difficult space to be in. I kind of have a lot of respect, because it takes a lot of courage for like the trans people, the transsexual people that are still on the gender critical side, speaking out against queer theory, especially on social media. You cop a lot of flack, so it's a really brave thing to do, and I kind of really want to give as much credit as I possibly can, like, especially to people like Aaron Kimbley, who is like calling himself a lesbian at this point and holding the space very publicly, which is incredibly brave and an incredibly important thing to do. Like, it's not something that should be sniffed at by any stretch of the imagination, because lesbian and female spaces are being invaded by males who are claiming to be female and lesbian. Like, it becomes even more important in that instance for people who are actually female and who have lesbian, that fit into that lesbian category, even though we don't look like we fit into that category. It's important for us to stand up and be visible and go, no, this is our space, because, if it's our space, it can't also be, like a male space. Like if you're going from female to male, from male to female, it can't be your space at the same time as being, like a trans guy realm as well. Like, and it kind of is a trans guy realm because, like women that I date, I tend to meet in the lesbian realm, whether they are like high femme lesbians who are interested in the extremes of female masculinity, or whether they are kind of bisexual women with a stronger preference for women, who are open to dating trans guys because it kind of suits them a bit more. Like pretty much every woman that I've dated post transition, I've met through the lesbian community. So if it is your dating pool still, then it is kind of your space. It's really important that we protect that space, and I think for the small number of people that are speaking out, like just a huge amount of kudos should be given. Aaron Kimberley probably deserves a medal at this point, just for his bravery and for the stances that he's taken. I don't agree with him about everything, but I have an enormous amount of respect for pretty much every transsexual person's that's speaking out, even if we disagree about lots. But Aaron in particular, I have quite a lot of respect for. The homosexual transsexual space is kind of a little bit of like a different space. It's kind of like almost an annex of the lesbian space or the gay space, which is something that doesn't make it's not a huge distinction in day to day or even in these conversations, but it just feels like a caveat that should be kept in mind. Detransitioners are a different thing, obviously. Like if you've detransitioned, then that's a different space altogether. But I think for people who are still who transitioned and who are still, basically transsexual and living a cross-sex life, like it kind of would behoove us to keep our distance a little bit, because even though that may be, it may be our space of origin, but there are other people in those that community probably belongs to slightly more than us to, it should cater to them more than it should cater to us. And transition is definitely a choice. And when you decide to transition, you kind of have to take the good bits with the bad bits. And this is definitely one of the bad bits in my mind. Like not being part of the active lesbian community anymore was definitely, like something that was probably one of the things that sucked the absolute most about transitioning. All right, so we're just doing a in the car addendum, because I kind of feel like I wasn't clear enough. Like, I think it's vitally important for HSTS transsexual people to be vocal about their same-sex attraction, like still being in a same-sex category, whether you're a trans woman who is a gay boy or a trans guy who is like in the lesbian category. I think that's vitally important. To kind of hold that public space and to be allies to our our same-sex brothers and sisters, and to women and men in general. I think like the advent of detransitioners makes it a little bit of a tricky thing, so I want to make sure that I'm crystal clear so that I don't upset anybody, because that's not my intention at all. I think for someone like me who is still, I'm not detransitioning at all, I'm still kind of masculine presenting, I haven't swapped back to my birth name, I'm not trying to feminize at all. For me, saying that I fit into the lesbian category is quite important, and it's something that I should do more of, which is why I think Aaron Kimberley deserves a shout out, because he does that daily. I think there are limits to me, someone in my position, doing that though, because the hormones do make a difference, and they kind of push you into, like I have a different emotional, social, intellectual experience on a day-to-day basis than lesbians that haven't transitioned, which means I kind of have a foot in both camps. I think for people who who are actively detransitioning, who have reverted back to their birth name and who are trying to feminize or masculinize, I think their situation in terms of being an active part of any gay community is a different thing altogether, and I think that they shouldn't have any limitations placed on them, and I would hope that people go out of their way to make the transitioners feel welcome in gay spaces, same-sex spaces, etc., etc. But I just want to be clear that I'm not saying, you know, like those two things are quite different. People who are not detransitioning at all and saying that they're homosexual and members of the homosexual category are quite a different thing than people who are actively detransitioning and going back to like their same-sex communities. And I kind of think that it's important overall, because queer theory is kind of designed to break down categories, it's basically designed to destroy. It's really difficult to argue from point to point and then be consistent across the board, especially at the principle level. Like just making consistent arguments that work together has been hugely problematic for people in the gender critical space to get their head around. Then adding the layer of, you know, like the principles that those arguments are sitting on, being consistent with that is just like a whole nother like mind numbing, you know, like let's not swear online or on video, but I do think that it's important. And I think that, like, I bumped into even people who say that they're conservative have kind of taken on progressive political ideals in the social realm, because it's like the frog in boiling water thing. Like we're swimming around with these arguments kind of populating our lives all over the place without us necessarily realizing all the time, so we start taking them on. So when we're kind of pushing back against queer theory, I think like we need to be really careful about employing queer theory principles to push back on queer theory principles, or even, you know, like critical theory principles to fight back against critical theory principles. And there is a little bit of that. I've started to see that happen in a number of different places, and I think it's something that we should just be like aware of, like saying that, you know, you are something doesn't, and not taking any active steps to align with that doesn't necessarily make you that. And thinking that you know, we can jettison the label of transitioners because it is a really uncomfortable position to be in at this point, because, you know, the radical queer Marxists have taken over our space while we weren't really realizing it. Like, I appreciate that that's like a really, really uncomfortable position to be, but like I kind of think that if we can handle it, we're better off to stand in the space and try and push it back so that transsexual is the only category, and that trans overall means that you have medicalized, and in order to medicalize you have a very steep curve of proving that this is gonna, you know, be the best decision that you've made for you, and that you're not going to be disruptive to society as a general kind of rule either. Like if transition doesn't help you live a more integrated and productive citizen type life, then there's no point to having done it in the first place. Like, I think that the transitioning to be a drain on society is something the society should absolutely be able to say, sorry, but no, that's not going to happen. I hope everybody has a good day. I will endeavour to do a few more videos more regularly. Cheers, guys.